This episode of Harvey Brownstone Interviews is brought to you by the Harvey Brownstone Talk Show Blend Coffee, available at hollywoodblends.com. Everyone's saying it's the best coffee they've ever tasted. Why not give it a try and see for yourself?
Hello, everyone. I'm Harvey Brownstone, and today's guest is a highly popular, multi-award-winning comedian, actor, writer, podcaster, and advocate who has become renowned not only for her versatility and her bold, hilarious, and edgy humor and wit, but also for her advocacy on behalf of the LGBTQ plus community, the Jewish community, and especially her passion for promoting freedom of speech and artistic freedom. On the big screen, she's appeared in many movies, including The Truth About Santa Claus, She Came to Me, Tripped Up, and Love Reconsidered, as well as some really great documentaries like The Aristocrats, Hysterical, and Trevor Noah's brilliant documentary, The Story of Cancel Culture, as well as Making Trouble, a tribute to female Jewish comedians. On television, in addition to her countless appearances on every major talk show, she starred in World's Dumbest and Hollywood Squares. She co-starred in All American Girl, and she has guest starred in dozens of TV series, including Roseanne, The Drew Carey Show, Law and Order, Sex and the City, Ugly Betty, 30 Rock, Madam Secretary, and many more. And she's been in some great TV movies and miniseries, including Here Come the Munsters, The Ballad of Lucy Whipple, Beat Cops, Casting, The First Lady, and the wonderful HBO documentary All Aboard Rosie's Family Cruise. She also appeared in the Netflix special Stand Out, an LGBTQ plus celebration, and she was featured in the Netflix documentary about LGBTQ plus comedians called Outstanding, a comedy revolution. She was a writer and producer on The Rosie O'Donnell Show, earning 5 Emmy Award nominations and winning 2 Emmys for Outstanding Talk Show. She's had a number of TV specials on the Comedy Central channel, Logo, and HBO, for which she won the Cable Ace Award. She's also hosted Comedy Central's 100 Greatest Stand-Ups of All Time, Nick Mom Night Out, and HBO's At the Multiplex with Judy Gold, which ran for nearly a decade. And on stage, our guest has starred in a number of critically acclaimed shows, including The Judy Show, My Life as a Sitcom, Clinton the Musical, Love, Loss, and What I Wore, Disaster the Musical, and 2 shows based on her best-selling books, 25 Questions for a Jewish Mother, and yes, I can say that, When They Come for the Comedians, We Are All in Trouble. She's also released 3 hilarious comedy albums entitled Kill Me Now, Conduct on Becoming, and Judith's Roommate Had a Baby. And if all of that weren't enough, our guest also hosts a terrific podcast called It's Judy Show with Judy Gold. In addition to her 2 Emmy Awards, she's been nominated for a Teen Choice Award for Best Comedian, and she was twice nominated for the American Comedy Awards Funniest Female Stand-Up Comic. I am beyond thrilled to welcome the incomparable powerhouse known as Judy Gold. Judy, thank you so much for being here.
Oh my God, I didn't even remember half of that stuff. I need to play that for my children. I just want to play the intro. I just want to get a copy of the intro and play it for my ungrateful yet loving sons.
Well, I would be happy to perform that intro for them.
Oh, thank you, Harvey. Thank you.
You have a music degree in piano from Rutgers University.
Right.
Were you originally planning a career in music?
Well, it's really not in piano. Piano was my major instrument. It was just a general music degree. And I come from a long line of teachers. And I think especially my father really wanted me to be a music teacher. And I needed a microphone. So I went into college thinking, oh, I'll major in like communications or what, something in the media. And it didn't hold my interest. And I love music. And I had been playing piano since I was 6 years old. And I played clarinet in the orchestra and the marching band in high school, but the orchestra in college. And I love music. I went to music camp. So if I'm going to get a bachelor's degree, I'm going to get it in something that I love. And it's interesting because you talk about the arts and you think, oh, she only knows music, but you learn any arts degree like that, you learn about history, you learn about sociology, culture. I mean, you're just learning it through a different medium. Because when you study music history, you study the history of the world. When you study art history, you study the history of the world, you know? So, yeah, I'm happy I got that degree, but someone dared me to do stand up in college, and that was the end of it.
Well, do you remember the first time you thought to yourself, I'm funny? I think I could make a living as an entertainer.
No, well, it was always my dream, right? And it was always, but I'm very tall, Harvey. And I was always like, when I wanted to be in the school play, you know, I was 6 feet in eighth grade. It was always like, oh, you're too tall, you're too tall. Even when I applied to graduate school at Mason Gross, Bill Esper, Mason Gross School of the Arts, which is part of Rutgers, Bill Esper said, you know, you're very talented. You have perfect comedic timing, but how do you expect me to cast you? And I didn't get it. Of course, my mother was like, he'll get his, but you'll show him. But I knew I wanted to perform. And I didn't know in what capacity. And yes, I was always funny. But when my friend Howard Rosenstein was my Secret Santa my sophomore year of college, and he dared me to do 5 minutes of stand-up, 5 to 10 minutes of stand-up in our lounge, and use all the people who lived on our floor as fodder for the jokes. And I got my first laugh, which I will never forget. That was it. I mean, I felt like an out-of-body experience. I felt like, oh, you know, an epiphany, like God was speaking to me. It was unbelievable. And
Because
I
it
don't
was
think,
an alignment of your talent with your destiny. That's why it was unbelievable.
yeah, it really was. And, you know, when I think back and I think of all the people who had such a profound influence on me, you know, Joan Rivers, Toady Fields, uh,
Phyllis,
Phyllis Diller, Moms Mabley, you know, Jean Carroll, who I learned about when I got older. But, you know, these women were not only clowns and fearless, but they were social commentators, especially Joan, who in her 5 decades of stand-up, every decade you knew exactly where women stood. And she was the first to talk about things women didn't speak about. And I remember she, you know, when you're sitting as a child watching television and your parents are laughing at the same thing you're laughing at, that's pretty magical.
yeah, it's actually quite transformative. So, who are the comics today that you look up to?
Oh God. You know, people ask me that, and it's like, Harvey, there are so many more comics than there were when I started in the 80s. You
Way
know, it's
more, way more. Wanda
way
Sykes.
right. But well, she's my generation. I'm saying these kids from, you know, the 2010s on, maybe even 2005 on, I don't know so many of them. And the whole industry has the rules have changed. The game has changed. It used to be the way we work. When I think back to the people that I really looked up to, you know, Paula Poundstone and Elaine Boozler and Joy Behar and Susie Essman and Mario Cantone and Richard Belzer and Richard Lewis. I mean, and Carol Leifer and I mean, I'm missing so many of them. Kathy Ladman. You know, I remember watching them when I was 19, you know, and they were pretty polished. And it was sort of like my graduate school was hanging out in these comedy clubs and seeing the greatest of the greats. Larry David, I mean, I saw everyone. But here's the really interesting thing that I don't think a lot of, I mean, I think of this in the gay community too. Young gays don't have the they don't carry the, I don't know what the word is, not the
It's
history,
they
the
don't have
reverence,
any historical memory.
right, and reverence for what we've been through, or, they haven't really done their due diligence. They're sort of entitled, which is good for them, but not good for our future. But, I tell this story. So there was a club in Soho called Comedy U Grand. It was on Grand Street. And Harvey, in the 80s and 90s, no woman ever worked with another woman. If there was a woman on the show, it was one woman. And we never got to go on the road together. We never worked together. But this club, Comedy U Grand, every Thursday night, starting in the 80s, they had all female comedians. And the way they advertised it was all female comedians. It's like they doubled down on the whole thing. And that was the night we all got to work together. And over the pandemic, we had a Zoom reunion. And Joy Behar was there. And she said, if it weren't for those Thursday nights, I would have quit doing stand-up. So they set the system up that there's going to be one of you. Who's it going to be? And it's as if we would be just in competition with one another, but we all became sisters and really supportive of one another. And now I look now and I see I go into a comedy club and I see gay, trans, non-binary, every culture, a lot of disabilities, it's amazing. But for me, especially, it's amazing to watch, a trans person get on stage and there's no pushback. It's like, you're a human being. And, it was really hard. I came out in 96 on stage, but I was in the straight clubs, and I came out as a gay parent. So I had all this material about being a parent, and that's how I came out on stage. But there were so many before me, which is why everyone should watch that documentary on Netflix, Outstanding.
Oh,
Because
it's
it
a
really
must
tells the
see.
story. It's a must see.
It's a must see. Now, you were a writer and producer on the Rosie O'Donnell Show, which was, in my opinion, the very best daytime talk show since the days of Merv Griffin and Mike Douglas.
100%.
What was Rosie like to work with?
Well, it's funny because I knew Rosie before she was famous. And I should mention Margaret Smith also as one of the favorite comedians of my youth. And she's the first person ever. She brought me to Chicago and I performed at a lesbian bar. And that was the first time I performed in front of a gay audience. It was life-changing. But I'd known Rosie, just from the clubs, and she was a Long Island comedian. She was very funny, and very driven. And I remember the story that she hosted VH1 Stand-Up Spotlight, and she was at a gig and heard about some audition and drove or left the gig early and said, I'm going to this audition. Working on that show, I did the first 2 seasons, I think was 2 of the happiest years of my life, of creating this. I mean, yes, it was a lot of work and a lot of pressure to put on a live daytime show. But I have lifelong friends. I have incredible memories. That show was transformative on so many levels, especially for Broadway. I mean, she saved Broadway. And I remember thinking, I talked about this with John McDaniels this summer, that, I remember that this show was such a phenomenon. Everyone, was watching this daytime show. And, they always put women in daytime. They never put women in late night. And I remember thinking, especially when we were rehearsing bits or setting up for a segment, that if this country, who was so obsessed and enamored by this show, knew that this show is being written, produced, and performed by a bunch of gay kids and their allies and theater nerds entertaining you, making your life better in a way, because here we are, and you have something to look forward to. And I always thought, God, if they only knew these, and they eventually, found out, but it was really, really, it was a wonderful time.
Well,
And it was a great show.
believe me, many of us knew, but to me,
Yeah, no, you knew. I'm talking about, Midwest housewives,
they didn't know. But to
now,
me, what made Rosie O'Donnell such a great talk show host is that she was first and foremost a fan of the big stars who came on her show. And we in the audience all got to live vicariously through her when she was with all those big stars. That was the magic of Rosie as an interviewer.
That plus the fact that, I was the human interest producer, the real people that she brought on, the kids.
The super kids.
Right. That was also a huge part of it. The fact that an audience member was picked to do the intro. It was a phenomenon, that show. But you're right, she was a fan. And I remember there were, I didn't get really like, oh my God, guess who's on the show, until Barbra Streisand showed up. And I remember, I would get like, oh, look who's here. I can't believe it. This is great. But for a Jewish girl from New Jersey who sat in her room with a hairbrush, making believe she was Barbra Streisand, and the wallpaper was the audience, flowers on the wallpaper. When she came out, yes, there was this feeling like I was so connected with, here's her dream. Her mother loved Barbara, it was very emotional. And there were a lot of really emotional, times on that show. But the best part was how much fun we had.
Well, when we had John McDaniel on the show, Rosie's musical director, he said that Rosie would like to have come out publicly much earlier, which her TV show, when it was still on the air, but she was under tremendous pressure from the network not to do it. Would you like to have seen her come out sooner?
I would have, only, I think, because I was out, and I was annoyed with the media in a way, who all knew, but would and the network that would promote her as, TV's hardest working single mom. She often had she had a partner, this, and I think she was uncomfortable with that. Everyone knew, she was very comfortable with who she is or was, and very open about it. But, it was a really hard time. And, Ellen was this sort of prototype. She lost everything and then got it back. I would have loved it, but you can't put a clock on that. And I don't know what the network was saying, but yes, she definitely would have preferred to be like, hey, this is who I am, and you love me. That's the thing, is that's why comedy is so important. It's such a salve, it's a weapon, but you can change someone's mind. When you make someone laugh, they like you, and then they say, oh, you're this? Oh, and I kind of like you, and we kind of agree on the same, and it really is, again, the word transformative. It gives people more compassion,
Although I don't see you as just a comic, you're incredibly versatile. If anybody needs any proof of that, I'm going to mention that you played Gremio in the Public Theater's Shakespeare in the Park all-female production of The Taming of the Shrew. Was that a stretch for you?
I had never done Shakespeare, but I'd taken a lot of acting classes, and I studied theater and, acting and scene study and all that kind of stuff. And I got on the subway for that audition. And they basically said, it's an all-female Taming of the Shrew. You're not playing a man. You are a man. You are, you know, the director was, really doubled down on this. We had a movement person that you are a man. And I remember getting on the subway, borrowing a neighbor's hat, like, from the 50s, those, what do they call the
A
whatever?
fedora?
Fedora, yes. And I dressed in a suit, some sort of tie, and I got on the subway, and everyone thought I was a man. And I think I walked in there and I really studied the text, and I got books and read about the, Shakespeare, because I had never studied Shakespeare. And it was amazing. I got this part, and I was supposed to go on tour with Cyndi Lauper, and my agent's like, and I'm like, but there's no money in public theater, Shakespeare in the Park. And he's like, and it was a bucket list thing. It was amazing. I worked with Janet McTeer. Janet McTeer, Madam Janet McTeer. And so many, and I got to play clarinet in that. It was incredible. Phillida Lloyd was the director. That was, thank you for bringing that up, because that was such an incredible experience.
Well, and then another one, 2 years ago, you appeared in a terrific miniseries, The First Lady. You played Elizabeth Reed, who was Eleanor Roosevelt's personal attorney, financial advisor, and mentor. Now, you were playing a real person. How did you prepare for that role?
I did a lot of research. She was also Eleanor's lesbian friend. Those two, her and her partner, there's no wives, had owned the place downtown, the Brownstone downtown, where Eleanor started really hanging around with women and having these salons. And, I had a pretty substantial, we had some substantial scenes that were cut. And it was because they did not want to lean into Eleanor's sexuality, and which was really upsetting.
That's a real shame.
Yeah, because, Elizabeth Reed was not only Eleanor's personal attorney, she was also an activist, a suffragette. And Esther Lape was her lover. And, there were scenes in which we were being affectionate or holding hands or outwardly at these, female salons in the film. And yet we were told to kind of push back on that. And then when we saw the final cut and we were cut, it was kind of upsetting, because I think that part of her life is what made her such a hero, or shiro for women's rights. And she went on to really make such a difference. So, yeah. So that's what, you just never know. You never know. But
Yeah,
it was
that's a real
also
shame.
amazing.
It's a
Yeah.
real shame, because part of her sensibilities in being such an advocate for people who were marginalized was that she was marginalized herself. And
Right.
that was not conveyed in the miniseries. But I got to tell
Right.
you, I thought you did a great job. And I'm
Thank
happy
you.
I mentioned it. In 2014, you and your spouse were the first same-sex couple to appear in Celebrity Wife Swap. What was that experience like?
Okay. Well, first of all, we're doing Celebrity Wife Swap, and the kids are not into it. And I thought, this is, and it was, this is a good career move. I don't know. So I called Gilbert Gottfried's wife, Dara, and we talked about, she's like, oh, because they had done it. And she's like, just do it. And then they paired us with Penn Jillette and Emily Gillette, and I know them. And I thought, what's the harm? Even though Henry, my older son, was like in his emo high school, like, oh, get away from me, sort of. phase and Ben was in his middle school, oh, this is fun phase. But the fact that we were the first same-sex couple, I thought was really important. And the greatest part of it was that the producer had, his daughter had just come out and he was sort of dealing with that. And his goal was never to mention that we were a same-sex couple, which it's never mentioned.
But we knew.
And yeah, but you knew, but that was so wonderful. That was like, oh, we weren't this, we were just a couple. And the people, the response was so incredible because we ended up looking like this intact sort of traditional family. And they seemed like the sort of wacky family. They have no religion. I'm Jewish. I love Shabbat. So we did a Shabbat dinner with the neighbors and it was great because I do think that people could really relate to this family living in a rent stabilized apartment with one bathroom. And, here they are, I love them, but they're beyond wealthy and living on a compound. And Elisa, my partner's playing golf and, but it was great. It was great.
Yeah, I really liked it. I'm sure you know, Judy, that for people like me and millions of other LGBTQ plus people, you are a huge role model for our community. Do you ever
Oh,
feel pressured by having that responsibility of being a role model?
no, I don't. And I didn't realize the impact it had until I worked with Paige Hurwitz, who produced the Netflix documentary Outstanding Comedy Revolution. And the prior to that, she did a stand-up show for Netflix of all LGBTQ comedians. But it's the stories of these kids who say, thank you. I didn't know, I saw this loud Jewish woman screaming about her, kids and her, being a lesbian. And I was like, who is this? And like, she has a family and representation is everything. But what's interesting is, I'm not the first by any stretch of the imagination. Robin Tyler really was the first, but the fact that I reached these people and I did whatever I had to. I mean, I love doing activist work and showing up and being truthful. And now it's funny because all of these organizations where I hosted every benefit, every gala, every, they don't even send me invitations to their events anymore because so many people with higher profiles or, hosts of major network TV shows or news programs, they're the ones who get called. And it's funny because I bumped into Sam Champion over Pride weekend. We were at an event for Out Magazine and he said, remember when we were the only two? And I said, yeah, I do. So it's great, but I would like to go to some of these events or at least be asked.
Well, that's a sad commentary, frankly, on the industry and the lack of appreciation and the lack of memory, as you mentioned. How do you think being openly gay has affected your career as an actress?
Well, I think I came out in a very at the sort of cusp of my television career that I was really on a roll. I had done All American Girl. I had an HBO special. I had I was on another show, Blame It on Ernie. And as Guy Branum, who's also a brilliant comic and writer, says in this film, she sort of, I didn't see her until she was a producer on the Rosie O'Donnell show. And it's interesting because at the time, and even now, like now when I look back, I see, oh, okay, it definitely had an effect. And it was very, Harvey, my whole career has been, okay, well, don't talk about that, and don't be too Jewish. It's always been that. And that's who I am. Like, don't tell me what to. Anyway, that was I have no words for that. It's so frustrating, but
Well, it's soul destroying is what it is.
yeah. And yet I didn't really listen. I know that my agents and manager at the time were not happy, but Harvey, I got to go to bed at night, and I got to sleep, and I have kids. And, for me to lie or to hide, what message is that to my children? They're proud of the family. What I'm going to be proud and outspoken. So I never got to the point, and, it's so funny because you say that, and then, when people come after me for something I support, say I post about anti-Semitism, which I lose hundreds of followers every day, every time I post something about that. Oh, you're an old 90s hack, like, I
Good
don't
riddance to
feel,
them. Good
yeah,
riddance to them.
right. That's but it just reminds me, oh yeah, I was really hot in the 90s. But I have no regrets. I didn't ever compromise. I
You
stuck
didn't sell out.
integrity. I never sold out. Look, I'm not as wealthy as I wish I was. I'm not as famous or well known or selling out huge arenas.
It
Not that
ain't over yet, baby.
yeah, but my kids are proud of me. My family is proud of me. I'm kind of proud of me.
And you have a
Um,
huge following that's proud of you.
Thank you, Harvey. And I feel really good. I mean, you listen that intro, but also, like, I've done so many different things. I've had such a variety of things I've done in my career, creative things, and it's pretty awesome.
It's actually quite monumental. And one of the things you've done that I cannot resist asking you about, Miss Judy Gold, is Judy Gold the chef? Because
Oh
just
my God,
tell me if I've got this
Harvey!
right. Tell me if I've got this right. You've competed on the Food Network's Chopped All Stars. You've been on Rachel versus Guy Celebrity Cook Off and the next Food Network star, as well as the next Great Baker. Why in the world, Miss Judy Gold, do you keep putting yourself through all that torture?
Okay, Harvey, let me just say something about Chopped All Stars. Okay. Did you watch it?
Yes, I watch
Okay.
everything you do. I'm addicted.
Oh God, Harvey. Okay, listen. So we do Chopped All Stars. I happen to be a pretty good cook, and I took a lot of classes. And then my friend Gloria came. She's a chef, and we practiced and practiced. I did cut my hand, and I did have a little finger problem during the Chopped All Stars. But here's what happened. First of all, it's so nerve-wracking. It is beyond, you don't know what the ingredients are. So they do the appetizer, and it's chicken breast, gochujang, like this Korean paste, avocado, which is what I cut my fucking hand on, and vanilla cupcakes. So I'm with Johnny Weir, okay, who's never cooked in his life, Joey Fatone, who owns a restaurant, and Layla Ali, who's a cook and is never going to lose a competition because she's Muhammad Ali's daughter. Anyway, so we open the thing, and I'm like, okay, great. I'm gonna season the chicken breast, and I'm gonna grill it, and I'll make guacamole with the gochujang thing, and I'm all excited about. And then I go, oh, what the fuck am I gonna do with this cupcake? And I said, I'll bread the chicken, but anyway, so I cooked everything. I'm not, I'm at this point, my kids are young. I'm cooking and throwing it on the plate. It's like they don't care what it looks like. And so it didn't look appetizing on the plate. Meanwhile, Johnny Weir, who doesn't even season his chicken, is in the back getting flowers and little decorations, and it looks beautiful. Tastes like shit, but looks beautiful. So I get cut, which was like a knife in my, like, it's so devastating because you stand there for a really long time while they shoot it, like an hour and a half. And it's like, you're just dying to know who. All right. So I get whatever. And then the next basket has matzah in it. So I know that they thought I was going to go to the next level, and none of the people knew what to do with the matzah. I would have made matzah brie. It would have been, whatever. So yeah, but then I did Rachel versus Guy, which I loved. And I was friends with Florence Henderson, and we were on the same team and just had such a blast. But yeah, I love challenges like that. The other ones, I was just a judge.
I think you are unbelievably amazing. And another thing that you've touched on, you are one of the comedians who very effectively incorporates your Jewishness into your comedy. You had a fabulous one-woman show, 25 Questions for a Jewish Mother. And it's based on a series of interviews with more than 50 Jewish mothers across America. Their stories are interspersed with anecdotes about your mother and your life as a mother of two sons. What would you say distinguishes Jewish mothers from other mothers?
So funny, because that was the first question I asked all the mothers. And I got such a myriad of answers. One woman said, "We love our kids more." I'm like, okay, you're out of your mind. Which, you know what I think it is? I think it's yes, there's this overbearing Jewish mother stereotype. I think that most Jewish kids, because of their mothers, feel protected and safe and adored. And not all, because everyone's not a great mother, but I think the generational trauma of being kicked out at the last moment and having to leave, or not knowing, like, you think this is like hysterics, but it comes from generations of, people, where are you? Where are you? My mother used to be like, "Judith, where are you? I called you." And but that is, handed down from real trauma.
It's in our DNA.
It is. And also a little bit of the narcissism of, "No, it's fine," that sort of thing. But as a mother now, when I say, "No, it's fine," I know I'm not doing it for the guilt. I'm doing it for the funny. And I just think, I think the difference is that we talk to our kids every single day. Most of us. And you ask a Jewish mother how often they talk to their kids. It's pretty much daily or multiple times a day.
I can certainly relate to that. My mother used to leave me messages on the answering machine. "Hello, Harvey, it's your mother. Get married, have children. Goodbye."
Yeah.
Even when we didn't talk, we talked.
Right.
But tell me about the anti-Semitism you're dealing with within the industry and in your personal life. You've lost followers. What's going on, in your opinion, about anti-Semitism right now?
It's funny because I say on stage, first, right after October 7th, I posted a post, and I really meant it, that said, "I now know who would hide me." And some people were like, "Oh, haha." No, I now know who would hide me. And I think, for me, this anti-Semitism, as I said, I say this on stage, that, 10 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago, people would say, "Are you Jewish?" Well, I don't do anything Jewish, and I don't practice I don't consider myself Jewish. You can't do that anymore. You are you can't deny that we are a race of people. And the thing that is really the most upsetting about the anti-Semitism is that it makes me profoundly sad, because as a Jew with Jewish values, and you don't have to believe in God, and you don't have to be kosher or do anything Jew. I'm not talking about that. The contributions Israel and the Jews have made to the world at large have affected all of your lives personally. You think about, I'm doing an event for the Israel Cancer Research Fund. They are actively finding a cure and have made such strides in cancer research and in developing a cure. Do they say, "Oh, you hate Jews? You're not gonna, you can't use our you can't benefit from our research. Your clean water comes from Israel." The problem is, Harvey, is that Israel is there. It's allowed to defend itself. It was attacked. It's tiny. Egypt has a border there with the Palestinians. They don't help at all. They're surrounded by enemies who don't want them to exist, who don't want Israel to exist, and want all Jews gone. We've been through this before. So when we were victims right after the Holocaust, we had this, "Oh, I love the Jews." And now that we're fighting back, everyone sort of hates us. Do I agree with how we're fighting back? No. Do I want innocent Palestinian children and women and dying? No, none of us do. Do I agree with Netanyahu? I do not. I don't agree with politicians in this country. So the fact that these people have not done their due diligence, that are in a cult, essentially, and that when you say, I did one post where I was sitting on the couch and I was like, "Hey, everyone, just want to let you know Hamas is a terrorist organization. Take care." Hundreds of followers go, "They're a terror. They hate you." I'm not saying anything about Israel or how they're handling the war. Harvey, I got home from Israel a couple of days ago. I was there performing. These people want peace. They want their family, their hostages back. They were so thankful. "Thank you for making us laugh. Thank you for coming here. Thank you." It's yes, there's nuance in this, but there is blatant anti-Semitism. You can talk about the Middle East and what's going on in the Middle East and have your opinions, which no one had prior to October 7th. They had no idea what the fuck they were talking about, and they still don't know what the fuck they're talking about. And you go to, Syria and Myanmar and Sudan, where there's real genocide. Like, it's it makes me crazy.
It's really mind boggling, and it's very distressing as a Jewish person to witness the ignorance that so much of what is being said is being propounded, especially on university campuses, by people that are supposed to be the next generation of intellectuals.
And they're not right.
And by their professors. And of course, this all brings me to your most recent book. Yes, I can say that, which is, in my opinion, a beautifully written advocacy piece for freedom of speech. It's an indictment of the current trend of censoring comedians, and you argue very effectively that censorship of comedians actually undermines the art and the very purpose of comedy itself. What's been the reaction to the book from within the industry?
I think it's funny because comedians love it. Some have reread it. I'm on the board of the National Coalition Against Censorship. I do want to add one thing to the last Jewish thing. And I want to say that when I was a little girl, and I'm sure when you were a little boy and you read about Anne Frank and you thought, oh, that could never happen here, our innocence is gone. And I do believe it could happen here. And I do believe that every 80, 90, 100 years, this happens to our community, our people, and it's our turn. So that's that. But, and you know, when you talk about freedom of speech and these people who are spewing lies and anti-Semitic tropes,
But
do
we're
I like
fighting
it?
back. We are
Yeah.
fighting
Do
back.
I like it? No, I don't like it. But you have a right to say it. And we have a right to know who you are. And people should have to suffer the repercussions of their speech and their actions. And when it comes to comedy and satire, which weakens propaganda, that's the thing about comedy. It weakens look, Trump couldn't even attend the White House Correspondents' Dinner. He wanted SNL investigated. This is all out of the 30, Hitler, you can't talk about the Jews without mentioning Hitler, but Hitler in 1934 passed the Treachery Act, which made laughing at or telling or hearing really an anti-Nazi joke a criminal offense punishable by imprisonment or death. And then the year prior to this, just everyone should know, is when he started banning books. So we're on this trajectory. Comedy is really there to speak truth to power. And when you silence comedians, Lenny Bruce, they got him, they arrested him for cursing. They wanted him on the substance of his material. They didn't care about him cursing, but he was talking about segregation, the Vietnam War. And we're going down that path. And these people, like the right-wing people, oh, we're free speech because we say, horrific things and lies. And the left with the crybaby, you can't say this word and you can't say that word. It's no. When you stop using terminology, it depends on how you use it. It's the comic's intent. It's not the way you hear it. You can hear it and say, oh, I didn't like that, and move on with your life. Or you can say, yeah, I don't really like that comedian. I'm not going to listen to them anymore. Great. That doesn't mean they should be silenced, but you watch Cabaret. It was the comedians who were speaking the truth and warning people about what was going on. Don't silence us. You see what happened with Charlie Hebdo and any sort of, satirical comics or, in other countries, comedians are jailed and killed. Yeah.
I have to say that one of the comedians who has been sacrificed on the public altar of public correctness was Kathy Griffin.
100%. I interviewed her for the book. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you saw her press conference right after the story broke out about her Donald Trump joke.
Right.
What did you think of her immediate response when the media came after her? Because I got to tell you, I was furious that she was apologizing like that.
Yeah, I wondered, we were all talking and we're all like, I was a bit confused. And I feel like she of course did it because she was terrified. Yet how many images of Obama being hung at a parade, or here's this woman who is at the last minute, and first of all, it became the fact that he loves ketchup, and it became its own thing. It was a bad joke. Wasn't a great joke for the bad timing.
But the
Right.
intent was to be funny.
Right. And
Right.
it wasn't funny. And they came after her. And they came after, this is what they do. They come after the weak. They come after the comedians who have no power. And they have all the power. This is what they do. And, I think about Kathy, who I've also known since before she was famous. So funny, so original, such an ally for our community.
And she's very bright. She has a very good heart. My
Oh,
heart
yes,
goes out to
yes.
her. My heart goes
And
out to
to this
her.
day, she can't answer her phone. And she has all these physical problems with her voice. And I think about, the fact that this is all affecting her voice, really, I think is a physical response to what she went through.
It's an absolute manifestation of what she went through. And my heart goes out to her and I wish her
Right.
all the best. That leads
Same.
me to ask you, Miss Judy Gold, who I absolutely adore, I have to tell you,
I love
when,
you.
when you're coming up with jokes, is there an internal barometer or measuring stick that you use in drawing the line between what's funny and what might be too offensive?
Okay. Excellent question. People don't realize that the line, and as George Carlin famously said, it is a comedian's job to find out where the line is, deliberately cross it, and make the audience happy that you did. And stand-up comedy is the only art form where the audience is a huge portion of the creative process. So, I say this in my show based on my book that, you know, we need you. We need the audience to tell us. We don't know. And so it's like, Van Gogh never painted some, a mural and then had, went up in front of a bunch of people and said too many sunflowers and, asked that, Leonard Bernstein was never conducting and looked at the insurance adjuster in the third row and said too much oboe. We don't know a lot of the time. Some of the time we do know when we call our comic friends and go, what do you think? Too much? But we don't know. You tell us that. And we are a work in progress so often, and yet you vilify us and our art form because you took something the wrong way. Yes, of course, there are things that are shitty and bad comics and people who punch down, whatever. There's always going to be that. But come on, stop picking on the comedian.
Well, if Don Rickles were alive today, what do you think he'd say about
Oh, I
censorship?
talk about that all the time.
What do you think he'd say
It's
about
our
censorship
history.
and
He
cancel
would hate
culture?
it, hate it, hate it.
Well,
Look,
you've served on the board of the National Coalition Against Censorship. What do you think it's going to take for people to understand that censorship is actually a form of oppression?
right. I don't know. We have to keep speaking up. It's the same. You have to hope people evolve
Well,
and can
you're
look at
speaking up.
things.
You're
Yeah,
now Judy Gold, the podcaster. You have your own talk show. And I'm thinking to myself, I think we need you to be a TV talk show.
oh, Harvey, me too.
That's my goal is to get
Okay,
you.
Harvey, I would love that.
I think we need to change network television, right?
It's
And
going down the network television. People
yeah,
don't
so
watch
is this
it.
the
Yeah,
perfect time to take it
right.
over? And one of the reasons I really wanted to have you on the show is to commend you publicly for your advocacy, your humanitarianism. You've performed at dozens of benefits. You talk about not being rich. It's because you're giving it away constantly.
Oh my
Benefits
God,
for
my manager says that to me all the time. You're
look at
not
the
doing it.
benefits you're doing. LGBTQ plus causes, ALS research and awareness, cancer awareness, Women in the World Summit, and of course for the Jewish community, so much more. Where does this sense of community service come from?
I think that I, because I, I don't have, a lot of people can write a check and, and that's it. Like I did my duty. I can't. I think comedy, especially for Jewish causes and censorship causes, Jews love comedy. I mean, it's been you know, coping mechanism. It's what's kept us alive. You know, I want to support the causes that I believe in, and I think it's part of tikkun olam, healing the world. And I think everyone should volunteer and give back. And I think it's really important. I just think it's an important thing to do.
Well, you're doing so much more than that. If anyone looks at Judy Gold's website, you will see that in addition to everything else this amazing woman is doing, you are an educator. You teach and coach women to sharpen their skills in public speaking, speech writing, creating dynamic communication skills. Where do you find the time to do that?
Harvey, I haven't been able to do that much, but yeah, I teach solo performance, people how to write one-person shows, and I help people connect, learn how to connect, because you're not gonna make a difference in your presentation if you don't connect with the people that you're speaking with. So I love doing that. Because I love watching the student, do it, accomplish their goals and have success.
One of the things that's so relatable about you, if I may say this, you take your anxieties, you take your worries about the world, and you externalize them in a way that makes us feel better about ourselves, and we
Right.
relate to you. It's really, I wonder whether you get that comedy is really the best therapy you've ever had.
Oh, 100%. The best comedians are people who've been othered, people who've been marginalized. Come on, you get in front of a gay audience, all we can do is laugh at ourselves. You can't humiliate us. We've heard it all. Those are the people that know that if we weren't laughing, as my mother would say, we weren't laughing, we'd be crying. And it's just so important. It's a unifier. It's something we need to let Harvey, happens when a baby's born and you see the baby for the first time, you try to make it laugh, you try to make it smile. Laughter is part of who we are. It is in our DNA. Why would anyone want to stop it? You got to use it for good. And I just think it's important to show up and give back and fight and stop being silent. These people who are oh, I can't do anything. Don't let other people fight your battles. My grandmother was 24 when women got the right to vote. Come on, that wasn't that long ago.
Do you tell your kids to be optimistic about the future? Are you giving them that
No,
seed?
I don't. I say, pay attention. And I'm sorry about the climate situation, and show up and do good. And they're good people. They're just good boys, and they contribute, and they know the value of volunteering and public service and showing up for other people who are in trouble. My older son Henry works with kids with behavioral problems. I mean, yeah, it's Harvey, there's such a sense of entitlement, especially in the young gays. And it's like, I get your whole, whatever your pronoun is, I get that you're fighting for that. I understand what you're fighting for. But realize that 10 years ago, we couldn't get married. That 30 years ago, 40 people were dying. That we sacrificed a lot so you can fight for what pronoun you want. I don't think we're bitter. I think we're, like I said, with I'd like to be invited to the party.
Well, Miss Judy Gold, you consider yourself to have received an irrevocable invitation to this party anytime you want. It's been such an enormous honor meeting you.
Harvey, you're the best. You made my week.
Well, sometimes when you meet your idols, they can be disappointing. In your case, you exceed every possible
Oh, Harvey.
expectation. You've got a heart of gold and you have an intelligence that when you combine that with the humor is just the most perfect storm of happiness that anybody could receive as an interviewer. And having you on this show was just the best experience. I'm
Oh, thank you.
so grateful. I wish you all the best with your
And you
podcast.
too.
I
Thank
know
you.
that you are not done. And so just don't be surprised that if you do become really super rich one day, I want you to start becoming entitled. I think it would look kind of good on you.
Ugh, okay, I'll try.
Well, please know that you're welcome to come back on our show anytime.
Thank you, Harvey. Where are you located?
Toronto.
Oh, I love Toronto. Okay.
We are here for you. Thank you so much for taking the time to grant me this interview.
You're welcome.
Our guest has been the delicious Judy Gold. For more information about Judy and to find out everything that's happening, please visit her official website, judygold.com. You can also follow her on Facebook, Instagram, X, and TikTok. And don't forget to tune into her wonderful podcast, It's Judy's Show with Judy Gold, on every major podcast streaming platform. My name is Harvey Brownstone. Thank you all for joining us. See you next time. Thank you to my producer, Steve Silver, my managers, Rick Marcelli and Robin Bragg Marcelli at the Marcelli Company in Hollywood, my director of programming, Robert Monaghan, my PR directors, Eileen Shapiro and Jimmy Starr, and my entire team at the XPTV1 network in the UK.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out all the great interviews on the Harvey Brownstone Interviews YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified when new videos are posted.